In this video I'm going to be taking down this rather sad looking curtain pole and replacing it with a nice new jazzy one. Stay tuned to see how. Hey, what's up guys, JB here, and as I've said already, I'm going to be replacing this curtain rail. It's not the best, it's rather cheap, it's ugly, it's almost falling out of the wall anyway. It's definitely time for it to come down. Now these particular curtain rails, you really do see a lot. They are a rather cheap option, and one of the things that's really common that I see a lot is where the bracket is against the wall. It just comes out. It either comes out like this, or this section here bends to well under 90 degrees, and it gives it this kind of dropped and uneven look. And the other issue is also the fact that this wall here is dry lined. Now one of the benefits of having a solid wall is you can generally get a much better fixing. So we need to make sure that if we're going in this dry lined wall or plasterboard, we need to make sure that the fixing is strong. So let's get started by taking this down. So we just undo that retaining screw that holds the pole in place. This thing is just ready to fall off the wall. So we just do the same on this side. There we go, and then we can just quite easily lift that pole, he says, there we go, off those brackets. So just look at the state of that. It's just not going to hold, and if I pulled that hard enough that would just rip out of the wall. What I don't want to do is end up with a larger hole in the wall than I need to have. So we'll get the screwdriver on that, pull it out. Well, should have guessed, wall plugs in plasterboard. That's never going to work. And I think same again there. I could be wrong. These might be the plasterboard type fixings. Yeah, I think these ones are okay. But it's that other side. Putting standard wall plugs in plasterboard, absolute no-no. Okay, so as you can see, what we're left with here are two lots of holes. Now what I need to be careful of is that when I'm putting the new pole up, is that I'm not putting the holes anywhere near those holes. I'm going to have to fill those, and I will address that a little bit later. Once I get the new pole open, I'm going to play around with it and try and identify where the new brackets are going to go, making sure we don't go too close to where those holes are, because they're obviously going to create a weak spot in the plasterboard. And even if I was to perhaps drill another hole half an inch away from it, it might just be close enough to break out. So we'll keep those there for now, and we'll look at this new curtain rail. Well, here are my two curtain rails, and I've actually got one of these to put up on the other window just on the other side of the room there, which I'll do straight after this one. So in the box here we've got a smaller box of the brackets and screws and fixings. So let's open this up and take a look at what we're dealing with. The most important thing here is that we are able to get a strong fixing on the wall, because the last thing I want is for these to be falling down. So there's the bracket, looks pretty good. Quite a nice design actually. I can see the way that works already. So we've got a couple of grub screws here, on here and here. We've got an Allen key in the bag, so the first thing I'm going to do is just release this, because I need to actually get to this part of the bracket. So there you can see we've got the plate. Now this is going to go against the wall, so we need to get a couple of good fixings in the wall for this, and then this section just slides into there, and we then just do that up with the Allen key. Now we've got a small bag of fixings, but I've got to be honest, I'm not very hopeful with these. First of all, these are not the best quality wall plugs, and wall plugs are only for concrete, brick, that kind of thing, so I'm not going to be using these. I will just stick them in my box because I'm sure they'll come in handy later, but I'm definitely not using them for this job, so we'll get rid of those for now. And actually the screws aren't all that good either. I can just tell straight away they're not very good quality. They're a Phillips head, so I'm going to be using my own screws as well, so we'll just get rid of them also. Well, believe it or not, this little plastic thing is a sleeve to put over the pole, so it allows you to cut it square. That's pretty good, I like that. I'm definitely going to keep hold of that. That might come in handy one day. I don't need to chop these rails down, they're staying the length they are, but I do like that. That's a nice touch. So taking a look at the pole itself, I've just tried to get the end off the other end of the pole, but it won't come off, so actually only one side does release, so that means that everything needs to slide on from this side. So we've got all the rings here, which are quite nice, all kind of plastic coated on the inside, metal. It's good quality stuff, you know, it's not a cheap one. So let's just take all those off for now. I don't want those getting in the way, and we'll take that off too. So the idea is that we quite simply put these up on the wall, then slide these onto the pole, and then we can just slot them into position, tighten them up. Nice simple design and easy to put up. Again, it's just making sure that these brackets are put on really securely, and I've got some excellent fixings that will certainly hold that in place. The first thing I want to do now, I've got my pole, I've taken everything off it, I've got the two ends on. I just want to offer it up to the window to get a bit of an idea of where it's going to go and whether or not those holes are in my way. When you're putting a bracket on the wall for a curtain pole, you obviously want to leave a section of pole after the bracket. We're not going to put the bracket right on the end. That'll look rubbish and it's not really the right way to do it. So you always need to have a length of curtain rail sticking beyond the bracket, and it's also going to allow you to put the ring or the slider on the other side of the bracket, so when you close the curtains, all the curtains don't move. So that's a key thing with setting your bracket position. Now if I offer this up to the window, and I'll just put it slightly above, you kind of notice that the holes in the wall already are probably right about where I want to put the new bracket. I could just go a little bit further in, but what I could do is also drop that down slightly. But to be honest, if I drop that down to about there, which I don't really want to do because of this distance here, it's not going to be in the right position. So I think what I'm going to have to do on this occasion is put the brackets right next to these holes and just hope that the holes don't get too close. I think that's going to be my best bet. Well, you can see the holes in this bracket here, and they're actually in line and just above where the pole is here. So it's in the middle of the pole and along this line here. So if I just lift these holes up very slightly, I can get a really good idea of where the bottom of the pole is going to sit. Okay, look, I'm not going to beat myself up about it, but these holes are in the wrong position, or should I say they're right in my way. So I'm going to put my brackets just inside those, but basically at the same level. That's the height I need to be. So the next thing I need to do is ensure that the position that I put my bracket on this wall here is level, because we don't want wonky curtains, do we? Now, if you haven't got yourself a level, which I've got a level but not one this long, then there is another way in which you can do it. Actually, there's a couple of ways in which you can do it. Now, you could measure the bracket from the ceiling. Now, this is just kind of relying on the fact that the ceiling is level. Now, it should be, unless it's a very old cottage or something. The other thing you could do is measure it up from the window recess. That would also work. And for the purpose of this video and putting up these curtain rails, I've got myself a very straight cut piece of MDF. Now, I think this is probably about 100 millimeters, and if I put this here, it's actually at exactly the right height that I need. So keeping it completely level with this part of the window, it hopefully is going to be quite straight, but it's going to look completely level with the window, which might be probably more important, because if it's slightly out and I put my pole up completely level, you might just notice it slightly. Is it the best way to do it? Not sure. Perhaps, you know, you really should do it level, but if your window's wonky, you know, you decide. Whatever looks best, but without it being too obviously wrong. I think this is perfectly good enough way to do it. So what I'm going to do is mark a line across there, and then I know exactly where to put my brackets. You see, I have got a level, it's just not long enough. And even if I had a 1.2 metre level, it's still not long enough. I'm yet to get my laser level. Watch this space. So we put this back up then, so we put it just so it covers or goes alongside those holes on either side. Make sure that's level there and there. Perfect. All we need to do is just draw a short line across here, making sure that MDF is against the wall, and then exactly the same over here. There we go. Perfect. And actually, looking at the holes that are already there, that line is bang on the top of each of those holes. So this is either level or they're in line with the window or whatever, but that's cool. That's good enough. I still might just check it though. Oh yeah, that's good. What I will use the level for here though is just to mark the outside line of the window, because I want to make sure the bracket is the same distance from this part of the window outwards. So by drawing this line here, which is in line with this, I can then measure that, and that will be the same either side. Fantastic. I've got the line of the window, I've got the level line of my rail. I just need to measure how far along I'm going to go with each bracket. So what I'll do is just line this up with the holes on this bracket when I come to marking it. So I'm thinking I probably don't want to go much closer to these holes than what I've got here. So let's just measure what we've got there. from that straight line. That's absolute 40 mil. So 40 millimeters is the position that I'm going to go for. So I'll just make sure that's in position, and from there I'll just mark those two holes. There we go. So you can now see the two holes along that straight line there where we need to drill for those, and that's 40 millimeters from here to here. What I can do on this side is just mark it at 40 millimeters like so. I don't need to hold the bracket up and measure it at the same time. So we just hold that at 40. It's getting quite close to where those other holes are, but I don't really want to go much further into the centre, so I'm just going to have to cross my fingers and hope this doesn't break out. Now I've decided, for the purpose of this job and for this video, that I'm going to use two different types of plasterboard fixing. In terms of the thickness or the diameter, they are roughly the same. The only difference is with this type is that it does have this screw that actually, or this screw thread that goes wider than the fixing itself, which might be a bit of an issue if we put this one close to where the original holes are. So I'll use this one close to the holes, and I'll use this one furthest from the holes. So of course, just making sure that the drill bit you're using is a little bit smaller than these particular fixings. If you were going into concrete, you would need to ensure that it was about the same size, but because this is plasterboard, it will break away slightly and quite easily if we hammer these in, which is what we want really, because we want a nice tight fit in the hole. Here's a little tip for you. If you don't want to make too much of a mess, and you do make a bit of a mess drilling a, you know, kind of 1/4 inch size hole in a bit of plasterboard, then get yourself a bit of cardboard or a bit of bendy plastic like this, a bit of masking tape, stick that to the wall just under your hole like so, and then you can just curl that up and catch all the rubbish. I'm just going to punch a small hole just where I want the drill to go, and again, just because it's a slightly larger drill bit, I want to make sure it goes right in the centre, so just by creating a small hole it will follow that centre. So the plastic fixing should just hammer straight into your hole. Perfect, look at that, that is really tight in there, and I've got that completely flush to the wall. And then using the metal type fixing and a screwdriver, again completely flush. Perfect. I picked up these 40mm size 4 posi drive screws, which should be absolutely spot on for those fixings. Absolutely solid. Very pleased with that fixing. That's going nowhere. Brilliant, so we've got the brackets on the wall now, we're almost there. Now the last thing to do is to put the brackets on and to put the rings on. Now we need to make sure that we put one ring on first before we put the end bracket on, like so. So that way we can have that one ring at the end, that side of the bracket, so as I said earlier, the curtains won't close all the way. So one ring, one bracket, then we'll put the rest of the rings on. Except one, of course. So we'll take one off, we'll put another bracket on, and then we'll put that last ring on and then the end cap. So we can now put those brackets into position on the wall. Like so. So we just do those up on the wall first. So we just do those up on the wall first. So get those two sections of the bracket nice and tight. And same here, making sure that that's in the right position. There we go, that's good. Get that one tight on there. Perfect. We just measure these ends to make sure we've got the same distance on either end, because we don't want that looking out of place. So it's about 70 millimetres that side and about 70, just over 70 there, and just over 70 there. So we'll tighten these grub screws which keep the hole in position in the bracket. And there we go, we're done. Oh yeah. Now that's how you put up a curtain rail. If you like this video, why not give it a thumbs up? That would be awesome. And if you like what I do on my videos and you like my channel, then why not subscribe? That'll also be fantastic. And remember to hit that bell icon so you receive notifications when I release a new video. Well, if you don't want to leave right now, why don't you check out some of my other videos right here? And during these rather worrying times, look after yourself. I'll see you soon.